but it's a fun excuse.
That it is.
Uh-oh, I dropped my phone. It must be Mercury retrograde.
Mercury retrograde.
Or Mercury Gatorade. Or Mercury's in the microwave.
I am with Stephanie Butler with Clarity Counseling and Wellness in Shalimar, Florida. You are my first repeat guest who was not the best man at my wedding.
All right.
So, and sorry that you weren't at my wedding, but I didn't know you
Right.
11 years ago.
Right.
So Stephanie, thank you again for coming back. I really do appreciate it. So, in this podcast, which will be released when I turn 40.
Yay!
So I'm turning 40, right? I am excited to turn 40. A lot of folks aren't. I mean, I am excited and I'm not excited because, like whole midlife crisis and everything. But I am excited because I feel like I finally reached that threshold where I can be taken seriously somewhat. Granted, I thought that 10 years ago when I turned 30. I'm like, oh, I no longer have that 2 in front of my age that screams inexperience. So, but now it's like, but then like when I turn 30, it's like, oh, you're still young, and then we're also called, anybody under 40 is called a young professional.
Oh, right. Yes.
And so, yeah.
Right.
So like now we're going one level beyond that.
You're an old professional.
I'm an older professional. I'm an experienced
There you go.
professional.
Why is that?
Well, so when I turned 36, that October, I reached the 20-year mark of my profession. And I'm like, okay, I have 20 years of experience. I can say I have 20 years of experience. And so, like, me turning 40, I think back to Mike Gundy, who was the head coach of Oklahoma State football. And he was, like, lambasting these media folks and over, like, them criticizing his quarterback. And he's like, that's a kid. You want to come after somebody, come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. So that's my mindset. But I'm also thinking, I'm turning 40. I don't feel it all grown up. Why do we not feel that way? That's where you come in.
Oh, no. I don't feel grown up either. So it's funny because when you say that, I'm reaching 40 and then people will take me seriously. And my first thought as a therapist is it you taking yourself seriously or is it other people taking yourself seriously, right? And I think there's probably a little bit of both. I am over 40, well over 40. There was not
Okay, you don't look it for one. So sorry to interrupt. You don't look it for one, but go ahead.
Yes, I'm several years older than you, and there was no magic. Of course, I also, too, turned 40 during the pandemic.
Oh.
So I did not get to celebrate. So that was a little bit different. So, was I really 40? Did I even really turn 40 if I didn't have a party? Yeah.
It's like if a tree falls in the forest,
right?
And no one's around to hear it. But
yeah.
Why do you feel like you felt that way?
I thought about that a little bit too, and maybe this is a good answer to your question, but I think when we're younger, we look at older people. They look older than we do now, right? Look at the Golden Girls. Like, they were younger than us.
Yes.
They look so much older.
Yes.
I think beauty standards are different. When we were younger, we saw these professionals come in. They had on their suits and their ties, and at some point they had on vests, and they carried themselves differently. And like a professional was someone that wore high heels and a suit to work. And, and here we are not that,
no,
but we're both professionals, successful professionals. And so I think some of it's cultural. And I think, when you're little, you look up to people and they look confident coming into the room and you think, well, that's what I'm going to get. When I'm an adult, I'm going to get that confidence and I'm just going to know. I'm going to be an adult and I'm going to own it. And that's not at all how it happens.
No. And the thing is like, we can go to our parents and ask them but they don't give us that kind of reassurance of, well, we were just as lost as you were.
No, I think we talk about it more nowadays, too. I mean, back then it was like, I'm your parent or I'm your boss, and this is what I say goes, and don't question it. When you get to be a certain age, then and it leaves very little room for back and forth of, what were your insecurities? How did you feel? And I bet they felt the exact same way.
And it's... They probably did, but they didn't want to. It's sort of never let them see you sweat.
Exactly. Yes.
And I'm the parent. I'm the authoritarian.
Yep.
I am this. Like they will say. I think what they refer to it as. Oh, I was young and stupid.
Right.
But we see it as we're still stupid in a way. We're young, but like it almost feels like we don't know what we're doing. Like we're still winging it. I walk into a room. I can notice my cadence with somebody when I walk into a room and I'm talking to somebody who in my mind I feel like knows more than me. And when I'm talking to them, it almost sounds like I'm the child who, is just like in awe or enamored or just, and like I say words, I say the things. I clearly don't know what I'm talking about compared to you. And I felt like that even with folks who were my age.
Yeah.
And it was very debilitating, very frustrating because I grew up with a lot of folks saying, oh, you're going to do great things. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. I mean, I graduated at the top of my class in high school. I got most outstanding student in college. And then I come into the workaday world and I don't know shit.
Yep.
I don't know shit. And so like in doing these podcasts, this podcast is the third in just as many weeks because I put it off for so many months after our first podcast. And it's because I was trying to make it perfect.
Yep.
I was trying to make it absolute perfection because of everything that I know. And it's in the back of my mind. It's like, you went to school for this, you know better. It doesn't look the way that it should, and you know that. And it's like, it's my own self-doubt.
Yep.
Screaming at me, saying, you should know better. And you don't. And do you believe that that's part of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, imposter syndrome, when you break it down, is chronic self-doubt. It's chronic self-doubt. It's that internal critic in your own mind that's replaying everything. And so when you look at the types of people that get imposter syndrome, it's like one end of a spectrum or the other. It's like the people who were always told they were good at everything, or the people that were told they were good at nothing. And they never learned how to accurately measure what they were truly good at, what their weaknesses were, what their strengths were, because I think we did grow up in a time when weaknesses, like, we just don't talk about that. Like, you have to be good at everything, or most things. We won't acknowledge like, hey, this might be a weakness. So when someone says you're going to be great, you're going to be wonderful, they don't really stop to give you constructive criticism. You don't really learn to evaluate, like self-evaluate. It's like, well, I just have to fulfill this dream that someone pushed on me, and we never really learn how to regulate.
And you were talking about constructive criticism, and then there's those of us, we talked about it in our ADHD episode, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So like when we do receive constructive criticism, it's like we're being like, even if it is constructive, it's still criticism.
Yeah.
And we revert to like feeling attacked.
Right, because you never learned how to accept it.
Yeah.
Because if it's like you were always expected to be this way, or if you never got a break and you were criticized for everything. But then if you have that into the mix, it's like, oh man, good luck.
Somehow I ended up with both.
Right.
I was either praised for everything or I knew nothing.
Yeah.
And like it was either one extreme to the other. But what was that moment for you that made you feel like your imposter syndrome wasn't there, even if it was momentarily? What was that moment for you, if you think about it?
Oh, I have a good story.
Okay.
So I didn't even realize that I had imposter syndrome until my therapist said it. Right? Like,
Okay.
I was not even aware. I thought I just had a really tough internal critic, and that, Stephanie's always a go-getter, and she's a perfectionist and she wants to do that. And so I felt like I had to rein that in, like something was wrong with me. And she was like, I feel like this imposter syndrome is getting you. And I'm like, the what? Excuse me? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's not me. I'm an imposter from imposter syndrome. That can't be me. Right? And that's how deep it went. So earlier this year, I got a phone call from a colleague, and she said, hey, I've got this client, and she went on to explain a complex issue. And I'm like, okay, now who in the area, I'm like, what about this therapist? Would she be good for this situation? Or what about this? And she said, Stephanie, I'm referring this client to you. And I'm like, me? She's like, yes, because this is your area of expertise. And I had this very strange moment of, oh my goodness. I'm looking around going, who else is more qualified? And it's me. I was it. The buck stopped here. And I said, I'm just going to have to say out loud that I feel very uncomfortable right now with the fact that this is on me. I can see it on paper, and I can say it all day long. But now that it's in front of my face, felt completely ill-equipped. And I was extremely nervous. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll just have to believe that I know what I'm doing. But it was very surreal. She's like, Stephanie, I called you, like, because you're the expert. I'm like, huh? It's like the meme, when you're like, I'm the adult in the room looking for the other adult, and I am the adult.
I need an adult, and I need an adult. Oh, you are the adult.
Yes, that was. I'm literally looking around like, oh, it's me. Yeah, and that wasn't that long ago.
Oh my gosh. So I actually have kind of a similar story. So, and this was actually quite recent as well. This was actually on the anniversary, the 23-year anniversary of when I started my career in media. So when I was 16 years old, I was approached by the local television station in the town that I grew up. And I was already filming football games and basketball games for my high school media production class. And the TV station was also there, like we shared a booth. And someone from the TV station approached me and said, we see you at every game. And we know that you're not getting paid. We want to see what you're capable of if we're paying you. And so on a Friday, October 13th, with a full moon, I started my career in media. We were talking about before the start of this, we were talking about like planets aligning and Mercury in retrograde and everything like that. So like my big thing is Friday the 13th, full moon on the Friday the 13th.
Lucky.
Yeah. So
lucky.
Oh my God. So fast forward 23 years later, I was asked by my old high school to DJ their homecoming dance, which I came highly recommended from actually our rival high school because I DJ'd their homecoming and their prom. And apparently my old high school's DJ fell through, and they approached me and they said, do you have any like video of the dances? And I said, okay, for one, like, what am I going to do? Shoot video of people dancing to the Cupid Shuffle?
Right.
But also, I know I'm getting along with the story, but it's like, listen, here, I come highly recommended by Freeport High School. You can read reviews on my social media. Like, I'm it. And, like, I actually had to pretend. I'm like, it's like I was pretending. I'm like, oh, I hope they take me. I hope they take me. And, like, the second that I get in, they already asked me they already asked if they could book me for their prom. When I'm going into setup, I'm like, okay, great. So while I'm at my old high school, the homecoming game's going on, and I decided to go into the stadium and go up to the press box and see my old boss from the TV station to see how he's doing. And I had a gift for him, to thank him for launching my career. And I give him his gift. And he actually says, listen, I actually wanted to talk to you. Apparently the TV station's sold. They're not doing any local programming now. No football. They haven't done football in like 2 years. And he says, I know that you do live streaming. I know that you've done live streaming. Would you be up for doing that? And it came full circle. I started my career with this man, great man, wonderful man. And he's now the one 23 years later approaching me about heading up this whole thing.
Nice.
That was my moment.
Yeah.
That was my moment. That was my lack of imposter. That's where I'm like, oh, I've made it.
Yeah.
I've made it. But what sucks is that it has to come down to those moments where you're actually approached, like you with your colleague and me with mine, is when you're approached by stuff like that. The other moments like that, there's a picture right up there. I was featured 7 years ago in Emerald Coast Magazine. That was another one of those moments.
Yep. And
then New Year's Eve going into 2021, like, the big transition year. This was a year after, this was about 2 years after my break, my psychotic break, where I fell at rock bottom. And like I was DJing at a bar where like I actually helped keep that bar open during the pandemic. and I was DJing New Year's Eve, and like I actually felt there, like I actually felt it, but it comes in bursts. It doesn't stick.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to make it stick? that you're aware of? Maybe not necessarily for you, but like, you know, sort of do as I say, not as I do.
Right. No, I think some of it too is just realizing that, you know, a syndrome is just a set of symptoms that really don't together they mean something, but if you can kind of take it apart, it's something that happens to a lot of people, so we don't really have to get it, we don't have to believe when it happens. So being aware that like, hey, I'm feeling not so capable and confident, but that's a feeling and it's not the truth. And then being able to change it in that moment of, this is just my imposter syndrome. I know better. I know that I am this way. And then when we wake up in the morning and we're going to our job, it's like, I can do this. I have the experience. And it's really changing that internal dialogue, noticing when that internal critic comes out. You know, when you have those past criticisms come back, they live in our brain, right? Especially people that want to do a good job. You know, we want it to be the best that it can be. But it's like realizing, okay, this is just what it is. These are just thoughts. I can use it to motivate me or I can use it to stop me. So it's an everyday practice until your thoughts automatically go to, I got this. I'm okay. I can do this. And so you don't have as many ups and downs. I can't guarantee that you're not going to be starstruck in front of someone or feel, you know, incapable. And that's normal. That doesn't mean you're not able to do something just maybe stumped you one day or you don't feel as confident. That doesn't really have to mean much.
Yeah. And and again, making it stick. I remember when I started this business, like I felt like I was playing pretend, like I was playing dress up, like I was playing grown up with my toys.
Yep.
And I feel like millennials go through this more than anybody. I don't even think Gen Zers go through this. Like they just walk in with Riz.
Yeah, right.
Riz is the word of the year.
Yep,
They walk in with Riz, just knowing that they do it. And like Joe Burrow, I don't know if you watch football or not, but so Joe Burrow, he's the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. He won the Heisman Trophy when he played for LSU. Dude walked into a national championship and walked out like smoking a cigar, and just, you know, he's like, oh yeah, I got this. Yeah. And oh yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl. Like he just had this confidence in him, and you kind of hate, like you look at it and you kind of hate him for it. You kind of just look at him and it's like, you're so cocky,
right?
But it makes me wonder if cockiness or if confidence has become confused for cockiness anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, like this need for feeling humbled, or you need to be humble. Do you think that that's a contributing factor to it?
What do you want me to speak to first? The Gen Z or the millennials or
let's start with millennials.
So I think, you know, millennials have grown up in a time where, you know, we've seen all the memes where they've had like we've had 4 complete world breakdowns in our lifetime, right? You know,
4?
I mean, it's like huge. I mean, we've had 9/11,
right.
We've had a pandemic, we've had wars. I mean, several wars. We've had the economic crisis.
Yep.
I mean, there's just been so much.
One after the other.
And so I don't know how much that plays into it as well, because we didn't really. I'm a Zennial.
Same.
I'm a Z millennial. I'm in that weird, you know.
Or Gen X millennial.
Gen X, excuse me. Gen X millennial, Zennial, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think we've seen so much that we really are still kind of trying to figure out and like get our grounding. And we also grew up too with like these ideals. You know, our grandparents came from World War II, and it was very much like, okay, you need to go to college and you need to get married, and then you have to get a house, and then you have to do this. And then boomers, our parents are boomers, right? They are the ones that instilled that. Mm-hmm. But they lived in pretty peaceful times.
Except for Vietnam.
They pretty much lived in this, you know, idealistic time. Yeah. And that got passed on to us in a world that it didn't fit in.
Right. And well, I mean, with Vietnam, like, so my dad actually joined the Air Force so that he wouldn't end up being drafted.
Yeah, smart.
You know, like that's the big difference. Like we look at the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, like we were at war for 20 years. Granted, our arms were not twisted to go like they were in Vietnam.
That was so scary, yeah.
You know, like to be drafted. And I mean, I can go into a whole thing with that. But you're right. We've been through some, and kind of the same that our parents actually went through, because they went through an economic crisis in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, then the 80s came, and then it was a big economic boom. Then the 90s came, another big economic boom.
Yeah, they had 20 years of
20 years
bliss.
of economic growth, and here we go, and here we come. Coming out of college, and then there's no jobs for us.
Right. 9/11.
9/11.
Well, and then for just a little bit of time, we were promised this, hey, if you get into tech, you can be a millionaire in a week.
Yep.
And so people were like, oh, and so time didn't matter. Rules just went out the window. And we have so much more opportunities now. I mean, we live in a completely different time. And I'm sure every generation says that.
Every generation has their own different time. But I think, as a contributing factor to imposter syndrome, I think one of the other things that what millennials go through is nostalgia is the marketing tool for our generation now, because we're the ones with the wallets. We're the quote unquote big spending generation, even though we don't have any money.
Right.
But
thanks, Social Security.
They appeal to our nostalgia because we look back in our childhood as a great time, because adulthood sucked for us.
Yes, absolutely. Right when we got into adulthood, 9/11 was happening.
9/11 happened, and then the Iraq and Afghanistan war, and then a few years later, the housing crisis.
And the boy bands broke up.
The boy band. No, not NSYNC. No, JT, why?
Yeah, I mean, we had some devastating, it was rough. It was rough.
But as a contributing factor to imposter syndrome, I feel like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that's part of the reason you're here. I feel like because we look back so much at our childhood, that when it comes into adulthood, it's like we're reverting back to our childhood. It's like we're going back to that. We constantly have to go back to that safety net.
Sure.
And we're also made fun of because we have to go back to that safety net.
Are we?
By older folks.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's like, you're so easily triggered. You have that but you need to go to your safe space.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You've seen the memes out there of from boomers and even Gen Xers saying, oh, well, the millennial generation is weak because we feel like we need to go to our safe spaces. Like we need to avoid trigger words.
So we're still being talked down to.
Yes.
Right? So it's like you almost wonder, are they trying to keep us in our place still?
Yeah.
And
I think that's a contributing factor to the imposter syndrome as well.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, keeping someone in their place, it's like when you do that, you want to make sure there's a power differential. So how can you ever feel like you're even on equal ground if someone is still talking down to you?
Yeah.
I think at some point we have to just accept that we're not accepting that anymore.
Yeah. I think we're starting.
I hope so.
I think we're starting. I feel like I'm starting to.
Yeah.
I was hosting trivia one night, and the folks at the restaurant usually let me park right in front of the restaurant. There's no designated parking space there, but it's also not a fire hazard like motorcycles park in the spot. But they let me park there because the parking lot's always full. And one of my regulars parked in that spot. And I walk in and I'm like, the disrespect that you have.
Right. I love that, though, because that's what older generations have done. They have claimed it. They have come in and they have claimed it. And for some reason, no wonder we need our safe places. We feel like we didn't have a voice a lot of times. Yeah. And so we are just now, I think at 40, maybe learning to use our voice. I'm worthy. I can do this. I have accomplished this. I've got 20 years under my belt. I can't come in and demand this.
Yeah.
This is respect.
It's like, you will respect the gray in my beard, sir.
Did they move?
No. Wait, what?
Did they move their car?
Oh, did they? No, they didn't. No. Well, no. It was it's a close friend of mine.
Okay, so you let it slide.
Yeah, no, I let it slide. They're my neighbors. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm just like, you. I like it though. The disrespect, son. He's like, well, get here earlier, and I'm like, They ended up losing that game too. So yeah, I actually felt terrible because of how they lost, but that's neither here nor there. But and actually talking about gray hair, you notice that a lot of us aren't dyeing our hair anymore.
Who? No. I mean, I am. I am.
I mean, like, I'm embracing.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah,
I think
like,
aging gracefully, I mean, you see a lot more gray
Yeah.
hairs. You know, you see a lot more people, you know, women especially, just being like, no, this is me. I'm growing out my hair. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I love that.
It also makes me think, like the reason that I'm doing it, I'm like, see, I have gray in my hair. I'm older. Like, respect me.
Right.
Respect me. I have the experience. Well, you still don't have as much experience as me. Well, no, you're just getting old now.
Yeah.
That's the attitude that I get anymore, because I'm tired of it. Because when I was in my 20s, I always felt like, I would try to contribute. I would try to, like, share ideas, and it's like, yeah, stay quiet. The grown-ups are talking.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with my 30s. It's all of these, like, I have clients that try to lowball me. I mean, I still have it going on. Like, I still have clients that try to lowball me. And it's like, no, like, you're getting a better product. You're getting over 20 years of experience. Like, if you want to go and let your 16-year-old nephew film something, go right ahead. It's going to look like shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, you know, I think also, like, the pandemic, you know, like me wearing my hoodie and my t-shirt and jeans, granted, I've always been like this, but I think with the pandemic, we all got used to being very comfortable and working in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, when I film my when I film my TikToks, I'm wearing gym shorts all the time. Like, I actually, like, the fact that I'm wearing shoes and jeans in my own home is making me uncomfortable right now. But now let's move on to Gen Z real quick. Why do you think that they have that confidence now?
You know, they're young, though. So, I mean, can we really judge them? You know, they're young and ignorant.
I would like to think that, though, like, even when we were young and ignorant, we didn't have that. We didn't have that. They've kind of grown up, too, in this idyllic era. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the last, you know, I mean, yeah, sure, they had the pandemic, but, yeah, I love Gen Z. They're a whole different breed all on their own. Yeah, the bros. Like, they're just they're the bros. The Tide Pod generation.
And they really do. And they really, you know, they do have the confidence, and maybe it's social media. You know, maybe they see more normalization of imperfections, maybe, and maybe things are more talked about. You know, I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. I mean, what do you think?
I think that's part of it. I have a nephew. I have a Gen Z nephew, and he's in wrestling. He plays football, and he just has this, like, cocky, confident, almost like Joe Burrow, like this cocky, confident.
And it's real. It's not like overcompensation.
It's not overcompensation. He's good at what he does. He's damn good at what he does.
And he knows it.
And he knows it. And I just look at him sometimes, and he gets this, like, little smirk. I'm like, you little shit. Even though he's not little anymore, he's taller than me.
Yeah.
But I love my nephew. He's funny though. But he has this confidence. But it also reminds me of, like, the guys who acted like that when I was in high school, and I'm like, oh boy. But he's a good guy. He really is. He's a good guy. He actually stands up for kids who, like, get bullied and stuff like that. But, you know, but again, like, yeah, they have the Riz. I think also, though, they didn't. Actually, this is a good place for me to say this, because I've been wanting to say this on a video for a long time. Because when we look at Gen Z, it's like, well, you know, you didn't grow up, or you grew up with your parents and your older brothers and sisters, and, like, the older generation going to war, experiencing 9/11, experiencing the financial crisis. You didn't suffer like we did. And so it's a hint of resentment because they didn't go through it. You know, we go and, you know, this whole thing with student loan debt, you know, like student loan debt forgiveness. It's like, well, I paid for my student loans, like, you should be able to suffer like me. And I'm going to say this right now out loud. I might lose followers. I don't care. Suffering does not equate to merit.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering does not equate to merit. As in, you may have suffered. And I like to counter that with something that I saw on a cross-country T-shirt. I didn't run. I'm not an athlete. But the cross-country coach in my high school, he had these T-shirts, and I loved it. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just because you suffered like we did does not mean that we should suffer like you.
Sure, it doesn't always build character.
Yeah, it doesn't always build character. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's a lot of stuff that does build character, but you don't have to go through trauma to do it.
Right, amen.
Sometimes you do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you do, but if it's not necessary.
Right.
You know, and I think anymore nowadays, it's not necessary. Trauma to gain character, to build character, to build yourself up as a person does not necessarily. I shouldn't say it's not necessary. It's not necessary.
No.
It's not necessary at all.
No. Well, you would think that the goal would be to leave the world a better place, but
Yes.
we have kind of seen some of these, and I'm not ragging on boomers at all, but it's like, we've seen this like, hey, thanks for what you did, to us, like, passed on all these things. But are we now doing the same things to the younger generation? You would think at some point we would be like, thank goodness, look at what we did that now they can be confident. Like, thank goodness we left the world a better place so that they didn't have to go to their safe space.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and like I like to think of millennials being the trailblazers for Gen Z, but also in breaking the generational trauma. We don't need to hold that same kind of resentment over Gen Z. It's like, okay, you have it easier now, thanks to us, but we're not going to hold that over you.
Hopefully you'll do something with this opportunity.
Yes, yeah, like do something with it. Like, we're breaking this generational trauma.
Yes.
We're not trying to hold you down. You do what you need to do, boo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, flourish
so that you don't suffer from imposter syndrome like we do.
Exactly, right? Keep your confidence.
Stephanie, is there anything you want to add?
Imposter syndrome is quite common. I'll say it's quite common, and therapy can help. And a lot of people are going through it, and you can get over it. You can work through it and come to a place of confidence in yourself.
I agree. Stephanie Butler from Clarity Counseling and Wellness in Shalimar, Florida. Thank you so much for being a part of this and a part of my birthday podcast.
Happy birthday. Yay.
All right. Stephanie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.